Ever find yourself clicking around an app or a website? Maybe you're trying to book a flight? Yeah? Or order dinner? Or just find that specific setting buried somewhere?
Happens all the time.
You know what you want. Definitely. But how does the technology actually sort of figure out your goal? Beyond just the buttons you happen to press.
Right.
Well, today we're diving into some really interesting research you shared that looks at exactly this. How AI is learning to understand user intent, as they call it, just by watching how you interact with the screen. Okay, let's unpack this a bit.
Indeed. And the sources we looked at, they really tackle a core challenge here. How can we teach AI to guess what you're really trying to achieve?
Right.
Simply by observing your sequence of clicks and taps and scrolls. It's what the research calls a UI trajectory.
A UI trajectory. Okay.
Yeah, so the mission really is to define this problem properly, work out how to measure success, and then see how current AI models actually stack up against us humans at this task.
So figuring out the real goal, that's the tricky bit then. I'm thinking back to that flight example in the sources. Asking for a flight from Hawaii to Sydney on April 22nd. Seems clear enough, doesn't it?
On the surface, yeah.
But what if you implicitly wanted the cheapest flight? Or, a non-stop one? Or specifically economy class? Those details aren't always obvious from the first few clicks, are they?
Precisely. That's the core issue. The input for the AI is just that sequence of actions, the UI trajectory, like you said. You see it in the diagrams showing taps, scrolls, maybe some text input.
Okay.
But the desired output is a description of your underlying goal. And inferring that is tough because, well, like you say, the true goal is often hidden.
Right. It's not explicit.
And also, we humans can describe the same goal in slightly different ways, which adds another layer of complexity.
And this research, it seems to be sort of breaking new ground here. The sources suggest it's one of the first proper efforts to really pin down this problem for, everyday web and mobile interfaces.
That's right.
But how do they even measure if the AI gets it right? That sounds difficult.
Well, this is where it gets quite clever, actually. They move beyond just looking for an exact wording match between the AI's guess and, say, a human description.
Okay.
They introduce this concept called satisfaction. Think about it like this. If your goal is very specific, say, find a recipe for chocolate chip cookies using unsalted butter, let's call that goal B.
Right, very specific.
Achieving that goal also inherently satisfies the broader goal of just look up a chocolate chip cookie recipe, which we can call goal A.
Okay, so getting the specific result automatically covers the general one.
Exactly.
But finding just any old cookie recipe doesn't guarantee it uses unsalted butter, so it only flows one way.
Precisely. It's directional. Goal B satisfies goal A, but goal A doesn't necessarily satisfy goal B.
Got it.
And building on that, they then define something called a match. This happens when two goal descriptions essentially satisfy each other within the context of that specific app or website.
So they sort of mean the same thing in practice on that particular site.
Pretty much. The Rome hotel example in the sources illustrates this well. Searching for a hotel with a 3.5 plus star rating might match searching for the highest rated hotel if, on that specific booking site, 3.5 stars is effectively the top visible rating tier anyway.
Ah, I see. It's about what's practically achievable or represented on the interface.
Exactly. It's a neat way to handle the nuances between how a user thinks about their goal and what the interface actually allows or shows.
That makes a lot of sense. And how did they actually test this? Finding the right kind of data must have been a challenge.
Well, interestingly, they had a bit of an insight. They realized this task, understanding intent from actions, is basically the flip side of UI automation.
Oh, where you tell the AI the goal and it does the clicks?
Exactly. So they could cleverly repurpose existing datasets, things like Mind2Web and Android in the wild.
Right, I've heard of those.
These datasets are full of recorded user interactions, but they were originally collected to train AI agents to perform tasks. They just use the data in reverse, essentially.
Using the data backwards, that's quite smart. Okay, so the big question then, how good are we and the AI at figuring out intent just from watching clicks and scrolls?
Well, the research benchmarked both. When humans look at the same interaction sequence, the same UI trajectory. They tend to agree pretty strongly on what the underlying goal was.
Okay.
The sources mention Cohen's kappa scores, which is just a statistical measure of agreement between people rating something.
Right.
And those scores were often hitting 0.8 or even over 0.9, which is considered very high agreement. So humans are generally consistent.
And the AI, how did it do?
Well, they tested AI models like GPT-4 and Gemini 1.5. And they're showing promise. They can infer intent to some degree.
But
But there's still a noticeable gap compared to human intuition. Humans are still better at grasping the nuance. Interestingly, Gemini 1.5 did show stronger performance across several of the metrics they used.
oh, really? Any ideas why?
The research suggests perhaps its specific architecture, or maybe the way it was trained, might be sort of better suited for this kind of subtle understanding task. But it's early days.
Right. So what does this all mean for you, listening in? It feels like we're looking at the early stages of AI developing a much deeper grasp of why you're doing things online. Moving beyond just tracking how you click to inferring the underlying purpose, the actual goal.
Absolutely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, this ability for AI to understand intent from action is really fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels important.
It's a stepping stone towards creating AI agents that feel more intuitive, maybe even genuinely collaborative,
How so?
because they could potentially anticipate your needs or understand your goals without you having to spell out every single detail explicitly. They get what you're trying to do.
It definitely leaves us with something to mull over then. As AI gets better, not just at following direct commands, but at interpreting your unspoken intentions just from how you navigate digital spaces, well, how might that shift your own expectations and your experiences with technology down the line? Something to think about, eh?